Welcome to the Friday Night Drive podcast, West and South Edition. I'm Daily Chronicle sports editor Eddie Carifio, and I am with Shaw Regional Sports editor J.T. Pedelty. J.T., playoff time, man.
Today's Halloween. Playoffs start tomorrow. I'm a happy guy. This is my time of year, man.
Certainly, maybe we'll get fall weather at some point, but it's a little cooler today, but still 62 is only cool when it's, 80 the day before. So.
Yeah, it's feeling nice. I got the window here. I hope you guys aren't getting too much of the ambient noise or whatever the word is. I think there's a train. They must have put tracks down right outside my house. It's nice and loud, but hence the headphones. So hopefully you guys aren't.
Your headset's doing some work. My windows are open too. I just hope no one does the yard work. So we're good.
Yeah. It certainly won't be me.
So let's get cracking, and I want to start up here with a game that's kind of interesting to me, and that's Canelan Belvedere North. It's a 13 versus 4 matchup in 6A. Obviously, we've talked about Canelan a lot this year. It's doing my cap, and we for the Friday Night Drive pick in the caps. Steve Susie was kind enough to pick every game, so we were just going with those picks. Before I looked at his pick, I was like, I really think Canelan has a chance in this one. I'd probably be picking Canelan, but I'm sure Sue's picked Belvedere North, and I open up his cap, and I see that he picked Canelan. So apparently I'm not alone in thinking Canelan has a chance in this one.
Yeah, well, you know what? Honestly, that's one of those games where, a 5-4 team. Canelan's one of those ones. We have a few more. I think the next one we'll talk about is another 5-4 that I don't think any 13 seed or if it's all together, what would it be? Whatever. They could fall anywhere, but I don't think any team that's
let's call it a 28 seed.
Yeah, there you go. I don't think any 8-1 or 9-0 is excited to see a team like Canelan come to town. Battle tested, plays in that Interstate 8 conference. That's just, you have 4 teams of the 6 are in the playoffs. It very easily could have been 5. And all 4 of those teams, it isn't like, they're in the playoffs and we expect a first week out. We're talking about the team that I believe finished 4th in the standings right here, Canelan. And, our Steve Susie sitting there saying, I think they're going to take out an 8-1 team this week. So, when you play good competition all year, it gives you bad things like, losses and first round trips to Belvedere North, but it also gives you good things like, you've been there, you've done that, and you're battle tested.
Yeah, this is, as much as teams strive to get in that 10-team closed loop conference, just the downside of it, because, you don't, Belvedere North, because that conference mostly went like chalk in the Nick 10 this year. I think there was one minor upset at the bottom that created 2 5-win teams, and Hononegah, which won the conference, actually had to have a forfeit. So technically, Belvedere North split with Hononegah. They both finished 8-1. But, it's hard to get a feel when you're talking with these closed conferences. You pretty much just have history to go off of. You have, if you are a consumer of game film, you have that to go off of. I don't know how much Nick 10 Belvedere North game film Seuss consumed. I'm going to go ahead and say I did not consume any on them. But
I'll bet he saw some, man.
Yeah, probably. But anyway, no, this is really interesting, and I'm glad I'm going up there Friday for that one. And Canelan, I'm optimistic for them. And interesting little wrinkle in this, while waiting, the winner of this game potentially is Wakanda in the second round. Wakanda finished 7-2. One of those 2 losses to Canelan. So it's definitely a nice, about as nice as you could hope as a 13 seed,
Yeah,
for Canelan.
Yeah, I think it sets up nicely for the Knights. And, we talk about Belvedere North. Their lone loss was 2 weeks ago to Hononegah, who you just mentioned, who ended up getting the conference representative playoff spot. But it doesn't matter. I was talking to someone on the sideline the other day, and they're like, well, if this team wins, they get that conference spot. So, that's better for them seeding. I was like, oh, no, it doesn't matter at all. And it doesn't.
It's the win that matters for the seeding.
Yeah, it's an automatic bid. I mean, I think that person, well, it was someone in Streeter. So up until recent years, the 70s were our only playoff experience. And back then you pretty much had to be a conference champion. And then a handful of at-larges would get in. So unfortunately, we're not as familiar with the playoffs and kind of their structure down this way as we'd like to be. But yeah, I think, I think there's a great opportunity here for Canelan to, represent the Interstate 8 well and kind of get a road win. And that kind of takes us right into 5A and another team that's in the same boat, Morris. Morris is 5-4. And I think we've talked the last few weeks about someone's going to get that Morris bomb dropped on them. And the answer is Troy Triad. Downstate, our Rob Osterly will be down there Saturday for a 6 p.m. kickoff. Morris is 5-4, Troy Triad 7-2. And, Triad's a good team and they've, done well this year. There certainly is no cakewalk. Morris has had their much publicized kind of some injury trouble. A few games where they just, quite frankly, with Sycamore and Rochelle, where they quite frankly weren't competitive, surprisingly not competitive.
Yeah.
So maybe not, the Morris team we're all used to seeing, but it's still Morris and they're still awfully good. That's an awful tough draw if you're sitting there at 7-2 to be like, oh, hey, Morris is coming to town Saturday.
Yeah, no, I mean, can we just copy and paste everything we just said about Kaylin with Morris here? Because I'm very high on Morris in this one. Obviously, maybe it's my North bias. Counting Morris for the purposes of this conversation is North, but I'm very high on them despite the one game I saw them. They lost, like you said, 42-0 in a very non-competitive match to Sycamore. Still, the pieces are there, and I think this is a solid matchup for them, and I think you see them. I'm debating whether I want to say win comfortably or not.
Yeah, it's tough. You're going on the road at a team that, Triad had a great first 2/3 of the season, kind of had some stumbles here towards the end. Collinsville got them in week 9. Collinsville needed that win to get into the playoffs, and they got it over Triad, and Highland in week 7 was the other loss. Both of them kind of Triad really couldn't get anything going. And Morris's defense, aside from, like we said, those stumbles against Sycamore, against Rochelle and against, Peoria High, which a lot of teams put a lot of points up on, Peoria High put a lot of points on a lot of teams.
I'm getting that one is a good defensive performance, if we're being honest here.
Yeah. But other than that, I mean, Triad, they sometimes struggle kind of containing, and they struggle get going offensively, despite having a really good quarterback with Isaac Ackerman. So, yeah, I think this one lines up well for the locals. I think Morris has a great chance to possibly get a second round playoff game at home, which is something they don't get often because they normally have that first round playoff game at home.
Yeah, well, that's something we could talk about. I could go on for very long but we're under I won't. So, but about why doesn't the lower seed just host? And I know the answer to that question is, makes money sign with fingers.
I think it's a lot more interesting. I like the system they have where they alternate. Why are we doing a podcast? We disagree on like every single.
That's why we do the podcast.
Beautiful.
I like the wrinkle if you threw it in, if you wanted to do it this way. And I know a lot of states work this way. You could have the option if you're the better seed, if you can decide if you want to go on the road in week 1. However, practically, I don't think that works out because then some team's going to be fired up like, oh, they don't think we could give them a contest at home. We'll show them. And no team would, I think, ever select that. So just practically.
You're probably right. What I would like, I think would be interesting is make state semifinals either, if not neutral site, which I think is a bit much, maybe the better seed always gets the state semifinal. I think when you get to that point, everyone's had a home game or two. If you're in the semifinals, you've probably had 2 or 3. Well, probably 2. But odds are, you've had your games, you've had your home games, your home crowd, everything. I think at that point, being a higher seed should be rewarded. But the other thing with the IHSA is these playoff seeds. I mean, we're sitting here, we just picked the worst seeded team in our first 2 games we talk about. They're all based on math. No one's sitting here saying, St. Francis played this team and lost, and here's a common opponent. So these seeds really aren't as representative maybe as they could be when you're talking about a state with 450 football playing schools.
Yeah, no, and that's actually an excellent point that I think I was overlooking a little bit. That may get overlooked a little bit when you think about that. But at the tippy top, it's certainly obviously a 9-0 team is a 9-0 team. So that's more where my brain's going. A team like Sycamore is where I'm thinking. If the 9 seed wins in their matchup this week, they're going to have to go to Chicago. I think that would be Westinghouse, and they'd have to go there. And we should also point out that if a bracket does go chalk, which when does that ever happen, you do get to host all your home games. If you're the 1 seed and you host the 8, then the 4, then the 2, you do get to play at home the entire way. but you show me that happening, and
Yeah, very unlikely.
But anyway, we're talking 5 and 4 teams. We should probably stick on that thing, because Sterling St. Francis. Sterling, I think, is one of those better 5 and 4 teams than their record shows. However, this draw may be not as amenable as the ones Morris and Kaneland got.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as we did in the first two in picking the upset, based on the seeds. I wouldn't go that far in this one, obviously, because it's St. Francis. They're they've won their last 4. Their only losses were week 4 and 5. They lost by 18 points to St. Rita, who everyone knows how good they are, and then they lost by 2 points to Providence, who just missed the playoffs this year, which was kind of a surprise. St. Francis was a state semifinalist in 5A last year, so tough draw for Sterling. That being said, I think this is going to be this has the makings of being a competitive game. Sterling, is one of those teams that last year they were 4 and 5. They snuck in the playoffs, one of those rare 4 and 5 seeds, and they won their first round game, blew out a public league, Chicago Public League school, before falling in the second round. But even this year's Sterling team, we talk about them being 5 and 4. They have 4 losses. That's a dangerous 5 and 4 team. I mean, they lost to Metamora, which is a 6-win team, by 19 points. Didn't get blown out. They lost to 3 and 6 Niles Notre Dame, but look at Niles Notre Dame's schedule, and that's a really good 3 and 6 team. They lost to 9 and 0 Quincy. That's the only game Sterling really hasn't been in this year. They lost 63-3. And then they lost last week to a 7-win Moline team by 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, this is a Sterling team that is. This is a good battle-tested team. I don't know that I'd say they're going to go to Wheaton and upset St. Francis, but I mean, they've played good football teams. They've played them well. I think Sterling has the ability to do it again this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think this is a win for St. Francis, but I think it's also probably a little bit closer than a 4-13 game you would think is on paper, although we already picked 1-13 team over a 4. But I'm with you. Sterling, like you said, battle tested. They, is that one ugly loss. It's hard to kind of, not look at that. But we gave Morris the benefit of the doubt, so I think we could do the same for Sterling, especially in terms of not maybe necessarily coming out with the win, but playing a close game and playing this game closer than you'd think. So yeah, I mean, I think this is St. Francis's game, but I'm not putting money down on this one, and I'd see what the spread is and maybe go Sterling if I'm getting touchdowns.
Yeah, I think it'd be I think it'll be a type of game where, it'll be worth following in the second half. It won't be one of those week 10 games where it's the end of the first quarter and it's 28-0. Okay, I don't have to look at that one anymore. I don't think that's going to be that. I don't think the Golden Warriors are going to let that happen.
So let's go with it. I know a team that you've talked about a lot this year and you've had your eye on a lot, and they get themselves a test. The mighty Peotones go to Eureka, 3A playoffs, round 1. How do you like this one?
So I've been ride or die on Peotone all year, and I said they had a stumble that I didn't expect. I expected them to be 7-2. I mean, when you're in a conference with Wilmington and Coal City, you have to have a really special team, and things break your way to not be 7-2 at best. They did have that loss to Mantino that kind of I didn't see that one coming, admit it. But Peotone still 6-win team. Boy, they run the ball. They possess it. They play decent defense. I think this is another one where I'm going to pick the road team. I haven't seen Eureka this year, but I've covered them a lot over the years when they were in that Heart of Illinois conference with when Fieldcrest had its really good teams. They and Eureka were always kind of butting heads, always seem to run into each other. Great environment down there in Eureka. They just have, every sport, everything. Eureka has just beautiful facilities. Their baseball diamond is, at least as of a few years ago, was at the junior high, and just a beautiful one of those like kind of down sunk in facilities with the wood fence and the ads painted on it, and just everything at Eureka. They have beautiful facilities, and that includes their football field. Should be a really fun one. That's a Friday night game at 7. Eureka obviously a very good team. They're 8-1. Their only losses to Tri-Valley, which is a powerhouse down there in that used to be Heart of Illinois, now Heart of Central Illinois Super Conference. But yeah, I think they're going to be very. I think Eureka is going to be tested. I think they both like to run the ball. I think number one, it'll be a fast game, and number 2, it'll be a close game.
Yeah, you're the expert on this one. I would say, just looking on paper, it probably would be going Eureka, but I know, like you said, ride or die. You and Peotone this year.
I have been on yes, I have been on the Blue Devils train all year, so I'm sticking with them in week 10.
I know there was another 3A game with a couple teams we've talked about a lot this year. Obviously, Princeton a ton. We've talked when Sam's been on here about Oregon. They meet up round one in the 3A playoffs. Oregon, number 13, 5-4. Seems like this is exclusively a 13 versus 4 podcast this week. And Princeton 8-1 is the 4 seed. They go Friday. Princeton had that, I know that loss to Monrose that caught a lot of people off guard, everyone in this podcast at the very least. So Oregon, I know Oregon is a very tough defensive team. Obviously, they have had their issues with Byron Dixon, just like everybody in the BNC had. But they played some really low-scoring games. They won a 3-0 game against Genoa Kingston. They are a very, very strong defensive team that's kind of gotten a little bit back more toward the run. What about how do you see this one shaking out?
The one thing that jumps out at me at this one, and obviously you have to think Princeton is, that would be the favorite here, the team to beat. The one thing that always sticks out at me, and you've covered high school sports a long time, and one of the things I've seen emerge, you see it so much, especially in baseball and softball, but in volleyball and in football, you have those teams that in football it isn't literal, but it's you have those teams that kind of have to win a play-in game in a regional in other sports other than football, and boy, it seems like they inevitably get off to a great start against those high seeds that had a bye, that maybe are working out those regional nerves a little bit. And weird, I'm bringing that up in football where there is no regional round or buys in the playoffs, although, some people, if they have their way, they will be.
No, but you're right, because if you're a 4-4 team,
Oregon's been playing basically playoff games for the last month. They had to win 3 of their last 4 to get in. It's been all high pressure games, all if we lose, we're done games for them for the better part of a month here. So, they've played with that pressure on them. If we lose our seasons, we won't play or past November 1st. They've sat there with that hanging over their heads for a month now. Princeton, hasn't had to. So I think that's a little wrinkle that gets thrown into some of these games. Do I think it's enough to get Oregon over the hump here against a Tigers team that, has been in the quarterfinals or deeper the last 4 postseasons? No, I don't. I think this is Princeton's game to lose. They have so many weapons. They're so well coached by Ryan Pearson. I definitely like Princeton's chances here, but it's something to keep an eye on early in some of these games when you have those teams that had to win in week 9, week 8, week 7, had to put together a run. They've already done their playoff run. They've already started it. And some of those teams will be a little more comfortable with the brighter lights and the pressure, I think, early on anyway.
Yeah, no, 4-4. Like you said, and this could bring us into the Genoa Kingston Dupec game, because Genoa Kingston, they played a playing game last week. They had to beat Rockford Lutheran, also a playoff team, I might point out, that had actually taken care of Oregon pretty easily the week before, I think 24-0. And they had to win that game in order to get this game against Dupec, which you saw last week. When I was reading your coverage of the game, it seems like, and I always want to say Serena, it's Seneca. Seneca seems to have kind of set a blueprint that I think is there for GK to follow to beat him, even though Seneca ended up losing. Run the ball, limit offensive opportunities, and this was the big part of the blueprint, I think, that where Seneca failed, and the coach said it after the game, I think, don't turn the ball over. So,
yeah, absolutely. Seneca had a couple second quarter turnovers that just very uncharacteristic of them over the past few seasons since they've kind of risen to prominence in that 2A, 3A field. Seneca had a botched snap, trying to drive down the field, throwing the ball's not something Seneca does well, threw an interception at midfield, and one play later. That's the thing with Dupec. They're so explosive. If you give them the ball with a little momentum and just a reason to take a shot down the field, they're going to take it. And, they're going to get a Cooper Hoffman, their quarterback. He can run it. He can throw it. He's just amazing athlete. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the blueprint is, as we talked with, back in when Peyton Manning was, running the Colts, and, the goal, keep him off the field. That was, if you can keep him off the field, put together long drives, put together, if you keep Cooper Hoffman standing off on the sideline, I think there's a path there for Genoa Kingston, but it's going to be tough because DuPac is a solid all around team.
Yeah, no, I definitely, if we're picking, I'm going DuPac, but I think that like I don't have to squint really hard to see how GK can come away with the win.
Yeah, and I mean, you say there's a blueprint. I mean, Seneca ran for almost 300 yards in that game, which is probably amongst their season low totals running. They run a power T. That's pretty much what they do. And they're exceptionally good at it. So yeah, it's one thing to say here's the blueprint. It's another thing to execute it. That being said, Genoa Kingston, a pretty good running team themselves, and like we just talked about, they've had to, they had to win in week 9 against a good team. They have every reason to think they can, travel to Pectonica and shock the state.
So speaking of Seneca, they finished 8-1, pulled a 7 seed, which seems a little low. It seems probably toward the bottom of the 8-1 teams. They will host El PasoGridley.
El PasoGridley, yes.
Yeah, 6-3, number 10 seed. Making sure I'm saying that right. It's not Gridley or whatever.
It is Gridley, home of Fat Albert's Tavern, the home of the Fat Burger.
That sounds amazing.
You know what? It's got like a real oniony sauce, so I'm not a big onion guy, but it is delicious. So if you ever find yourself driving through Gridley, which unless you're going from Streeter to Bloomington Normal, I don't know why you would, but if you do, stop at Fat Albert's, get a Fat Burger there. They make tasty food without that onion sauce for me.
So is there other stuff you want to talk about or just the burger joint?
They got a gas station.
I'm good with just doing the burger joint, moving on.
No, but El Paso also out of that Heart of Central Illinois Conference that we talked about. They're 6-3. They lost to Casey Westfield. That's an 8-win team. They lost to Eureka. That's an 8-win team. They lost to Tri-Valley. That's an 8-win team. So, El PasoGridley has a nice resume. They haven't beaten the tippy top teams on their schedule, but they were able to edge Shelbyville 34-30 a few weeks ago. That's a 6-win team. They were able to beat DMAC, one of their rivals, by 5 points in week 7, and DMAC's another playoff team. They beat Clinton last week 21-14. That's a 4-win team that would have been in the playoffs had El PasoGridley lost. This is a quality team, the Titans. It's a tough draw for them. Short drive, yeah, but a tough draw against the Seneca team coming off their first loss since the fall of 2021 season in the regular
season loss.
Yeah, first regular season loss since the fall of 2021, and a Seneca team that last year very easily could have been, and this sounds silly when you're talking about a team that lost a couple rounds away, but they're really the only team that gave Wilmington fits. They beat Wilmington in the regular season. They went to overtime with Wilmington in the playoffs and ended up losing, and Wilmington goes on and wins the state championship. So this is a Seneca team. Wilmington fell in 3A this year. So Seneca, has to be sitting there looking at the 2A bracket like there's an opportunity here for us if we can get back on a roll and shake off this loss.
One thing to point out about the Titans, to remember about the Titans, is 2 of those 3 losses also against Casey Westfield and Eureka, 2 touchdown games. Tri-Valley took care of them pretty easily, but Tri-Valley took care of a lot of teams. So they played close with those close games is the point to the teams that beat them. So definitely something to keep an eye on. It'd also be good, if Seneca does get a big victory, then, they know that, okay, they're closer to the Tri-Valley level, so that's for measuring stick stuff that doesn't matter to anybody who actually goes onto the field, but matters to people like us.
Yeah, should be a good one. Brian Hoxie will be there covering it for Friday Night Drive. I think that should be an excellent. And by the way, all these games we talk about and literally dozens and dozens more, there are previews on Friday Night Drive right now for our subscribers to read, so check it out.
Yeah, I should also point out that I mentioned, and we should have teased it up there, that was horrible, but Seuss's conference by conference picks for every game, I'm pretty sure they're all up now. I know through 6A is at least up. I'm pretty sure.
Class by class.
Class by class. What did I say? Pick by pick?
Conference.
Oh, conference by conference. Yeah, that was dumb. Class by class.
District by district, if you had it your way.
Yeah. Wow. No. 20 minutes, buddy. No. We don't have time to do that. We got to talk about Dwight and moments.
It is moments. I was actually on the phone with Susie the other day, and I said moments, and he was mad at me. He's like, why can no one pronounce moments? So I'm 99% sure it's moments.
Because the word mom is right there in the start of it.
It's a
ents
tricky
is
one,
a common ending. Mom ents. That's why.
I think it's a tricky one. You know what? This is another one of those games where the official Friday night drive pick is moments, but I am not a moments. John Sally tells us, our producer, moments, emphasis on the men, which always is a good idea. But yeah, Dwight Gardner South Wilmington's a 12 seed. Moments is a 5 seed, 8-1. Dwight came in 6-3, beat Marquette here last week. Dwight, weird season, won their first 3, lost their next 3, won their last 3. So they won't get a chance to lose 3. So the trend's got to be broken one way or another. You lose 1, you're out. But this is another one of those games where I think I'm picking the road team. I haven't seen moments. I can't say. They have a very good program. These two have a history. They used to be in the Sangamon Valley and that Vermilion Valley Football Alliance that lasted a couple years. For 8 years, they were conference rivals. Moments went 5-3 against Dwight. This Dwight team is better than any of those Dwight teams were, I think. And I think they're going to do I think the way they play, they've run the ball very efficiently, and they've found a way to kind of sprinkle in the passing game when they need it. And kind of really, I believe, their coach said that we found something in the passing game here lately. He told one of our reporters for Friday Night Drive a few weeks ago. I like Dwight Gardner South Wilmington's chances. They kind of get a rough seed because they have almost no playoff points because of that. They had a lot of one-win teams, no-win teams on the schedule, and that Chicagoland Prairie Conference didn't do them any favors outside of Seneca and Marquette. But I think Dwight's got a good chance to go in there and give moments a surprise.
Yeah, you mentioned this Dwight team being better than any of those other Dwight teams. The thing is, though, is this moments team better than those past moments teams in the past?
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they've got a couple real quality wins. They beat Westville's a 6-win team. They beat them by 1 point. They got a 1 touchdown win over Assault Fork, which is another playoff team. So, and they have a couple lopsided wins over playoff teams. 50 and Oakwood, Clifton Central. So this is a team that's beat some good teams. I would argue Dwight has too. That win against Marquette last week, I believe they held Marquette under 100 yards rushing, which is just unheard of. So I think it should be another really good competitive game. Wouldn't be surprised if either team came out of that one.
So you mentioned Marquette. That's a good transition into 1A. They're 5-4. They're a 13 seed against number 4 Rushville Industry. And the official FND pick is for Rushville Industry, the Rockets, to come away with the win. You agree with that? You agree with Seuss? Or you calling them out?
I think you got to go with Rushville Industry as the favorite here. 8-1 team, co-champs of the Lincoln Trail Prairie Land Small, alongside with Stark County. The only team they lost to this year was Stark County. But a lot of close games. I think other than one win, other than their win against South Fulton, their other 7 wins were all by 18 points or less. So that includes a win over Anawan Weathersfield playoff team, Rova team that just missed the playoffs, and then they handed Princeville their second loss in week 8, 34-21. So Rushville's played good teams, beat good teams. But it kind of reminds me of when we talked about that Genoa Kingston Dupec. That is there a path there? Is there a blueprint to win? The one thing Marquette teams do is they run the ball well and they play hard-nosed defense. And that's if you can hold on to the ball and, a lot of 3 yards in a cloud of dust and we're going for it on 4th and 1, we made it, and you look up and you ate 8 minutes off the clock and quarters are only 12 minutes in high school. That's a recipe. And I think that's the type of threat that Marquette will bring when they travel to Wixom Field in Rushville.
Yeah, that should be an interesting one. I could definitely see, Marquette coming away with it, but, probably I don't know. It should be interesting is the point, which I think we're almost done. Just one more 1A game, also private school, Sterling Newman Central, number 6 seed, Chicago Hope Academy, 11 seed, 5-4 for them, 7-2 for Sterling Newman. I know this this catches a lot of eyes as being a kind of intriguing first round matchup.
Yeah, this is the second year Newman's been in 1A. I don't know how that slipped under my radar last year. When I saw the brackets come out this year, the first thing I said was Newman's in 1A? That's not fair. And they were last year too. So, but normally a 2A team, sometimes a 3A team. I mean, you're talking about a team that's, a past, multiple time, state champion and great program. So they get to play this game at the big stadium in Sterling. With the Golden Warriors out of town. This is a Saturday game, 1 p.m. kickoff. But yeah, I think this is kind of a good matchup. I got to think Newman's your favorite here, but Hope Academy really hasn't been on our radar since week 1. We thought they might have kind of give Wilmington a test, and they didn't. Wilmington won 44-6. It turns out nobody's given Wilmington much of a test other than Coal City in the de facto Illinois Central 8 championship game. But yeah, I mean, Hope Academy, they have 54 playoff points. They've played a tough schedule. And so that's why they're, visiting a 6 seed, even though they're 5-4 instead of going higher. They're a good team. And I think they might give Newman a test, but I think you got to like Newman's chances.
Okay. I think that's, of course. We're doing click to pick, playoff clicks to pick.
Ooh, I haven't done one, but I can come up with one while you're talking.
Yeah, because I kind of didn't put one down either, so I'm putting you on the spot. I'll go first. I won't make you go on the spot. I'll go first since I brought it up. I'm going to go up to Genoa in this Dupec game. Will they win? Will they not win? I don't know. Probably not. But I'm going to go with Owen Zakard is my click to pick. He's a running back. He's a linebacker. Both key positions if they're going to try to slow down Dupec. I think they're probably going to have to get pressure on the quarterback, though. What's his name? Hoffman. I don't think it looks like teams get a lot of pressure on him, but it'll be interesting. GK has had some success slowing teams down against the pass. And then I think, obviously, him in the running game. GK has like 8 different players run the ball between 4 and 6 times every game. So if he can, make the most of his 4 or 5 runs, come up with about, however many yards, a touchdown, that would be a good sign for them. So I'm going to go with Owen Zakard of Genoa Kingston as my click to pick.
Okay. I was kind of thinking Cooper Hoffman was my first thing, but I'll branch out to a different game just to kind of add a little variety as the spice to life here. So I'm going to go Chase Rivera, running back for Peotone. Like I said, I think Peotone, they have a tough
ride or die, homie.
Yep. They have a tough task ahead of them with 8-1 Eureka going down there. And we'll see. But if there's a path to victory for Peotone, it's going to be on the feet of Chase Rivera. He's a heck of an athlete. He's approaching 1,200 yards on the season. He scored 22 touchdowns. He kind of does it all for Peotone. If they're gonna upset Eureka, it's going to be because Chase Rivera had a big game. And since I think Peotone has an excellent chance to upset Eureka, I have to say that I think there's an excellent chance Chase Rivera is going to have a excellent game. And one other thing I was going to add to it, not that we didn't have it on our budget, and that's my fault. I have just because we're calling upsets, I have an Illinois 8-man football association playoff game this Saturday. Flanagan Cornell Woodlands going to West Carroll, and I'm picking the upset there too. I like FCW's chances in what should be a great game. So, week 10 is kind of famous for blowouts, and there will be plenty of them across the state, especially in the lower classes. When you get to the upper classes, the parity kind of tends to level things out a little more. But this is a good slate of games, Eddie. I mean, we talked about a number of games here, which even though there's a few, we're like, man, there's an obvious favorite here. Quite a few there's not. I think this feels unusual to me for the first week of the playoffs.
Yeah, which is exactly why get more teams into the playoffs.
Why ruin it? It's so good this year.
So that's all for week 10. We will be back next week, right? I think we're going early next week for various reasons.
Yeah, I think we'll go a little bit earlier in the week next week, and then we're going to kind of play it by ear by then, see how many teams we have left, see if we have enough teams kind of down in our, we call it the Cornfield podcast. If we have enough Cornfield teams left, we'll keep talking football, and if not, then we'll let as the teams whittle down, let it kind of go to the flagship Friday Night Drive podcast as Steve Susie kind of turns his attention down this way a little.
Yeah, let the big boys take care of it. Let them come, glory boys, come in and just, well, that's a podcast, folks. He's been J.T. Pedelty. I've been Eddie Carifio. Thank you very much for listening.